Hi, everybody. Chris Lipper on the bus, small business owner coaching, and we are about to listen to Pete Borbas's story in the Entrepreneur's Big Book, and enjoy.
Peter Borbas, Borbas Surveying and Mapping, LLC. Ever since I was a kid, I've kind of been an entrepreneur, cutting lawns, blowing snow, paper routes, things like that. I've always worked, and I like the idea of working and making a dollar. I had that in me to begin with. During college, I found out about surveying. I had a minor in it. One thing led to another, and I ended up becoming a surveyor and actually ended up being chair of the American Congress of Surveying and Mapping. When I started college, I had no idea what a surveyor did. I worked for about 8 years for a couple of different firms after college. I worked 6 hours, 6 days a week. I wanted Wednesdays off to ski so I didn't have to ski on weekends. With their big company bureaucracy, they couldn't figure out how to just let me work 5 days a week and let me have Wednesdays off. So I quit. I had an ex employer who helped set me up in business, and I started skiing every Wednesday and started a company. We predominantly did residential work, but I had a liking towards the environmental end of things. It's one of the reasons I went to college to begin with and ended up building a rapport with a number of large and small environmental engineering companies. Eventually, there was a lot more money in that work than there was in residential, and I developed a reputation in that area. That's prior to meeting Chris and getting on the bus with him. I remember my first meeting and have it in writing that my purpose for being there to my bus members was that I wanted to ski on better snow more often. I wanted them to tell me how to run my business so that I could do that. We had challenges prior to that. Cash flow was my biggest problem. That was always challenging as we were moving into the area of working for corporate America like the Big 500 as opposed to residential property owners. It was different. There were other things that had to be addressed. An interesting thing was that I had always thought that when I retire from my business that I would just give the business off to my second in command. My bus members and Chris helped me to understand that there was value in the business that I had built. The reputation that we had was worth a lot of money right there. That actually a company could be sold or it could be leveraged. I just never thought about that. That was a neat thing, and I created a more sustainable business. There was a lot of coaching there about what a sustainable business looks like. That's it. The light bulb went off. I can remember when folks were talking about franchising. What does a franchise look like? In that, if we put all the tools in place to be able to franchise, not that I wanted to franchise the business, but if we had the tools in place to franchise the business, one would think that we could grow the value of the business. If it were ever to be sold and become a lot more attractive, putting the things in place protecting me legally. That was a huge one. It was cutting out a lot of risk. Having things like I never had before, like an employee manual. I had other business owners who were sharing their ideas on employee handbooks, etc. There were things such as standard operating procedures. What are your checklists? How do you do things consistently and your quality checks? All these kind of franchise things got put into place, and there's a standard to operate in business. This is how we did things. Another thing folks helped me to understand is that if I just said no to some of the business that I didn't want, then there'll be more time to grow it to where I want it to be, which would give me more time. The problem nowadays is we've got such a reputation that everybody wants us. So I spend my time just telling people no or just turning out a lot of proposals, getting the work and trying to figure out how to get it done. One thing we did is when phone calls would come in or emails would come in, my office manager was able to vet those things. She says, this is something that we're not interested in, and that's not what we do. It's not our forte. She's got a list of other surveyors that she refers people to. As I said, cash flow is a huge problem. I learned to tighten up my contracts. I learned that I didn't have to be pushed around by Big Five, Fortune 500 companies. I could stand up to them and say, no, I'm not signing the subcontractor agreement. Those aren't my terms. These are my terms. These are my payment terms, etc. And these are my insurance limits. If you want us, then you'll change your terms. Surprisingly enough, I found out there are a number of folks who would actually do that. When they said they could never pay retainers, well, I'm sorry, we're not working for you. That helped the cash flow mentally. I'm very, very happy to say that we've got a very nice cushion in case we hit another recession or a downturn in the market. I'm very comfortable about the way things are financially. Interestingly enough, over the last few years, we've been recognized by a number of national firms larger than us that have approached me to buy my company. That is very, very flattering. If I didn't have the wonderful situation that I have and the wonderful people that I'm working with, I might entertain that. I understand that some company that wants to buy another surveying company today is buying them because they cannot find people to work. There are very few surveyors out there. There are so few people who go into school for this, so the way they get people is they buy up other companies. It's almost like buying slaves in a way. I'm not going to do that to the people I work with. They have so much invested in it. I think they expect that they can be there for life and they're going to get treated really well and they're paid well. It's just a great atmosphere. You can give bonuses. My plan is to sell the business to my current second in command, who has been there for 12 years and is younger than I am. He'd like to have me stay on. If I were to sell my company to some entity, I'd typically have to stay on for 3 to 5 years. They'd take all the money and I'd just be an employee. I like to work, and retirement for me is something similar to what I've been doing for the last 36 years. Going canoeing, fishing, skiing, traveling vacations with my wife, and having great relationships with my clients and other folks who we meet and work with. I really like my life. I like what we do. I'm getting tired of some of the headachy kind of things and whatnot. Retirement for me is maybe when there's some kind of problem that I don't have to get the phone call. Somebody else in the company gets the phone call, and that I can spend my time mentoring the younger folks in the company. And not just the younger folks, but even the second in command. I mean, I've got 45 years of great experience that I want to share with folks. I think there's a lot of value in that. I'm having fun doing what I'm doing. I'll continue to do it and make a decent buck. So I figured out how to get all that skiing in. The solution is to have not just the systems that are in place, but the people in place. The right people to do the jobs that our clients need to have done. Everybody's different in their abilities and their knowledge. Don't expect them to do something that they're not good at. As Chris would say, having the right seats on the bus filled with the right people allows the bus to go down the road. I can be on a different bus or an airplane going someplace else. As to mistakes I made and learnings from those that can help other people, right off the bat, keeping somebody on the team that should be let go today. I'm a nice guy. I want to please everybody. My clients, my employees. I'll give everybody a second and third or fourth or fifth or sixth chance. The last thing I want to do is put somebody on the street. But there's a problem I've had for a number of years. When it was time for somebody to go, I just didn't have the big boy pants to do it. Maybe somebody's got some kind of personal issues that are somehow adversely affecting other people on the team or something, and not addressing those. Chris is a facilitator and a coach. And my other business partners certainly have encouraged me and held me accountable to having conversations sooner than later. There's another thing, being accountable. A lot of us sole owners can go through life without being accountable to anybody. And to have somebody who's actually interested in seeing you do well and agreeing to be accountable to them, is a very important thing. There is another thing I've learned in business which can be a big problem for people. I served 4 years on the Supreme Court Office of Attorney Ethics as a senior public member. What I saw in the complaints that came to the ethics office were attorneys and licensed professionals that did not respond in a timely fashion or respond well to their clients. As I took a look at my own profession, I see surveyors and engineers who have discovered that maybe they've made a mistake and they didn't address that right away with their clients. It could grow into something that could cost them a lot of money with lawsuits or even lose their license or be reprimanded. I know from watching all this in my experiences, if I actually make a mistake on some project, I get a hold of the client immediately. I say, I'm sorry, we've just discovered that we've made a mistake and I'm going to make this right. The other thing is, it's so good that this mistake happened because now I realize all these other things that we can improve for you now. It's going to come out of my pocket. I'm not asking you to spend any money on any of this, and we're going to make it right. But I promise you, everything's going to be better, much better than it was before. We just recently found a mistake on a project for a client with a brand new piece of technology. We didn't vet out the new technology well enough. We thought we understood it. There were variables that were set into the scientific instruments that we just thought the software would hold the variables that we set, as we've been doing for 30 years with other similar instruments. Well, it didn't do it. The data went out that was wrong. That could have been problematic for the client. I got a hold of the client immediately. I told him what happened. I said, we will rectify this, and if it costs you any money at your end, I certainly will cover those costs. Furthermore, you don't have to pay my bill. 3 weeks later, they paid our bill. Be as honest as you can with your employees, as honest as you can be with your clients. Don't try to snow your clients. Don't try to give them a line of crap. If you can't do something, tell them you can't do something. Then you'll be able to work through something with them that they don't know how to do. Figure it out together. How to have resources be involved in and associations that are similar to your profession. For a number of years, I'd be on a weekly teleconference call with people from Anchorage to Jerusalem. You think about all the people in between, the resources around the world. I had some friends or family members or colleagues who have passed away. They may have had businesses and left their spouses and or their businesses in kind of disarray. I wanted everybody in my company to be taken care of. I had another friend who had a heart attack. He had to shut down his business the next day. All of his employees couldn't pay the bills or put food on the table the next day. That's never going to happen here. Chris introduced me to somebody else who was involved with our bus at the time, an attorney who was very well versed in succession planning and businesses and estates. So I have a plan in place that if I were to get run over by the Lakeland bus, it'll just be like there's a speed bump in the road. The company will continue to operate. The clients are just going to think I'm going to be away on an extended ski vacation. A sale of a business is nothing that you want to do in a month or a 6-month time frame. You really want to spend time and think about who gets affected by it financially and how you get affected by it. What's the benefit to you, a spouse, the people that work for you, your business partners, etc. Have a succession plan in place while you're really healthy and alive. That is a really good thing. It's the time to do it.
I just had to play the music, sorry. So what a great story. And Pete, I took down some notes, but what I'm reminded of is what a good guy you are. And just how generous you always have been, both with your time, but you're so good in about thinking of your employees first. And you're just a good guy. I'm proud to have you as a friend. David, any questions for Pete?
Just curious as to what happened after the story.
Okay. So, Well, there's been more skiing around the world. Um, but interestingly enough, I set a goal of tentatively December of this year to sell the business and to change my role in the business. So back in June, I transferred the day-to-day operations off to my second in command to see how things would go. I wanted a half a year at least to see how that was going to, work out. Well, almost immediately, my wife became ill, and I have spent very little time working in or on my business since June. And particularly in the last 4 months, I've only been to the office maybe about 4 times, and I've probably spent about in 4 months, a total of 8 hours working because of my wife's illness. I'm happy to say that things have turned with my wife, and I believe that she'll be home for Christmas, but she's going to need some time to recover, and it could take a half a year or so when she's home. So I'll need to be with her. Well, the timing was pretty good because my second in command has done an outstanding job of managing the business, the clients, the billings and the profits, the efficiency, the people. And every time I call up and I ask, does anybody need me for anything and whatnot? And they say no. We're moving ahead with the terms and the financing right now with selling the business. And in the terms, I'm going to be able to do things that I want to do for the next 8 years if I want to, at a capacity that I want to, and the amount of time. So I'll have a lot more fun doing some things. But when I look back in retrospect here, it's all of these things that I talk about in the book that I put together that allowed this to happen. We talked about that franchise model. And so when my wife became ill, and like I said, I haven't worked for 4 months, the machine is running. We pushed that flywheel for a long, long time, as Jim Collins would say, right? And the flywheel's moving because of all of the things that needed to be in place to be able to franchise a business, even though I didn't franchise the business. Mm-hmm. So, going into the future, John and I will hold a little bit of a note of the business. I want to have my fingers in. I don't want to give up the pocketbook entirely. And I want to have my fingers in some of this. And he could choose to sell the business to another entity. We just had another entity last week that approached us and wants to buy us. And I've had a number of them. And it could be for more money than John's going to pay me for the business. But I wouldn't have the same relationship. And again, it's all the people that have worked for me for years that have allowed me to do what I do. So that's what's been happening.
Do you have another question, David?
No, just a comment. I mean, one of the things that resonated with me was his mantra of transparency and honesty. When things go wrong, just simply being straight up about it rather than trying to hide it. I mean, I think that actually makes you stronger in the long run.
Yeah, I agree. Your story is excellent, by the way. It's one of my favorites in the book, and I hope you had a chance to listen to some of the others. But yours is dynamite, and I agree with the one client. You said, "Hey, we had a mistake. We had a problem. Our bad. We didn't check the equipment first, or whatever it was. Anything it cost you, we'll take care of. And in fact, don't pay our bill." And then they paid it anyway. What a great story.
Yeah, David, that, in your world, it could have been like you delivered a computer or something to somebody's office or system or something, and you set up all the variables and the settings that you have to put in there, and then you walked away. But then the system reverted back to a default where it came from the manufacturer without you knowing about it. And that's what happened in that particular case. And we just didn't understand that would actually happen. So, we now, whenever we get another piece of equipment in there, we're really going through that piece of equipment. We're testing it before it goes back into production, before it's online on client use and whatnot. And we're really understanding even a piece of equipment that goes in for repair, because they may change firmware on us and update the firmware, but then they change the settings in there. So we don't trust anything anymore until we've definitely tested the heck out of it.
So I have a question, and I can see Alice is in our waiting room. There's no point in letting her in at this point. But your time on the Supreme Court, or the court that you had referenced, are you going to continue doing that, or have you continued?
No, that was a 4-year term, and it expired. It was a volunteer position in the state with the Supreme Court, Office of Attorney Ethics. It was wonderful. It was a wonderful experience. Taught me a lot. Things that I knew, but it just reinforced things.
And what were you, an expert witness kind of thing?
No. So what would happen is if you have an issue with an attorney and you make a complaint to the bar or whatever, your complaints go to the Office of Attorney Ethics. They get channeled off to the Office of Attorney Ethics. So in the state of New Jersey. And there are a number of districts that handle these things. And the ethics committees are made up of attorneys and public members. And so what will happen is the committee will sit down and they'll look at the complaint, and the attorneys will say, no, I don't think this needs to go anywhere. That's just a typical thing they do, and that person's just whining and whatever. And then I may say, you know what? I do think it warrants more of an investigation here. And I don't think we have enough knowledge, whatnot. So then, and I had as the senior member, public member at that time in my term, I had the final say over the attorneys and over the entire committee. And so if I said no, it's going to investigation, then it got passed off to another team inside the Office of Attorney Ethics in the Supreme Court. And then they dealt with that. I had nothing to do with, the investigation part of it after that.
Are there expert witnesses in your industry?
I am an expert witness. I'm recognized in a number of courts as an expert witness. And so I'm recognized by the courts, the insurance companies, etc. And that's the work that that's work that I tend to do nowadays.
And would you continue that, or would you stop that as well when you retire?
Chris, it's a hard decision, because what happens is in the beginning of a lawsuit, we have a lot of groundwork that we have to do, and investigation, surveys, reports, research, and then we hand off these reports and whatnot, and then we may have depositions. Well, then what happens is these things could go to trial, and I don't get to control the date of a trial. And if trial is scheduled for, let's say, this Thursday and Friday, and all of a sudden the judge's buddy says, hey, you want to go up to Canada, go trout fishing on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the judge can postpone the trial. But I could have a trip planned for France in February to go skiing for 2 weeks. And then I find out that I've got a trial that's coming up in the middle of that, and I have to be there at trial, and they expect me to cancel my trip. Well, as we know, Pete Borbas's fun things are a little bit more significant in his life than dealing with a bunch of jokers that and idiots that have brought a lawsuit against one property owner against another property owner. You know,
Right.
why should my life get adversely affected by what's going on? But you know, I like the work. It can bring in very good money. Usually we don't have to give a price up front. It can be, let us know when you hit this threshold and if you're going to need any more kind of thing. And it's fun stuff. And there aren't a lot of folks anymore, as my mentors have retired and died away. We don't have that many experts in my field, particularly in New Jersey.
Right.
And so, it's nice. It's humbling. It's flattering to be recognized as an expert, but responsibilities come with it, and I want to be responsible. What can I tell you?
Yep. So the other thing that stood out to me was when an employee came to you with something that you didn't know the answer to. You don't make up an answer. You don't BS them, that you're honest about it, and you'll say, let's figure it out together. And that was a big eye opener. I love that.
Well, I've always said my job is to make sure that every one of my employees is a success. And when I'm in the office, if I'm there in the morning, I will tell people, I'm here to make your day successful. What do you need from me? What can I do for you? I don't walk in there and ask people, okay, what are you going to do for me today?
Right.
It's what can I do for you to make your job a success? That's my job.
And I hope you don't mind me sharing this, but I remember at one time where it was a discussion of salaries, and you would ask the employees what they need to make. And your answer, okay, let's figure out how you can do that.
Absolutely. I don't want to pinch a person. I want them to be happy. I want them to like their job. I want them to be thrilled about their job. I want them to go out and tell other people, yeah, I work in the best place that you can imagine. The owner of the company is great. The environment's terrific. And because how are we going to get in people to work for our companies? I hate that whole thing about putting an ad out, hiring. We're hiring or something.
Right.
We are not hiring. And Chris, you know this, and we don't go hiring. David, we've always invited people to join the team. We've extended an invitation. And we'll ask them, what do you need? I don't know what your rent is, your mortgage. I have no idea what it costs to put food on the table for your family. I don't know. And I don't want to tell you that, here, I'm just going to give you this. And then all the meanwhile, you're looking for another job. Well, I'm paying you and I'm building you up to become better than you are. I'm invested into every one of my employees. And I don't want to lose that, just like you were going to put money into the stock market. You don't want that just to have a recession and all that money go away. All the people that work for you are an investment, and they're an asset.
Two more questions that I have. What is your average stay of your employees?
The average stay?
Yeah.
Well, let's see. We had Jim Sens, who was 22 years. Sandra left this last month, is now with me 23 years.
Oh, she left? I'm sorry to hear that.
No, she's with me now 23 years.
Good.
She moved to her home in New Bern, North Carolina a year ago. And she's working from there, running the business end of things for us.
Okay.
David, the technology is just great. She can do that, right? Pat's been with me 13, 14 years. John's now 14 years. I've got a number of people that are 10 years, that kind of thing.
That speaks volumes. You don't hear about that at most companies, right?
There's a lot of folks that move around nowadays, yeah.
And I don't know the terminology, but I know your industry is somewhat of a dangerous industry. What's your safety rating?
So in 37 years of having the business, we have not had one OSHA recordable incident. And our safety culture is over the top. And that is another selling factor to the clients who we work for that are heavy industry, Superfund sites, contaminated sites, etc. So they know that they can trust all of our employees. Drug test any one of my employees anytime. We've picked up, in 1995, I picked up Chevron as a client because another surveying company failed a drug test. And since 1995, I've billed them millions of dollars. And then there was another company that surveyor failed a drug test, and we've been working for them since probably about 1998. So these are things that the industry, the people out there know that they can rely upon us. And as we see people move from environmental engineering company and move from one to another to another to another, and they just spread us up around. So, yep, there's people we don't have to question. I don't have to worry about them if their client puts us into a drug test or something. Or safety. Can we leave them out on a job site? One of the country's most dangerous sites. Can we leave them there by themselves? Can we trust them to not get hurt? Kind of thing. We have that
And I'm
reputation.
sure that also helps you on the hiring side, that you can say that, not just, come join our team. Another advantage here is people don't get hurt.
So I remember one day Rick Merrill, he said, this is, and Rick's about the same age that I am, and it was probably about 10 years ago or so, and he said something, so you can imagine he's worked for about 30, 40 years or something. He says, this is the first company that ever cared about my health and safety.
Yep. Because you care about them.
Yep.
So Pete, just in case somebody sees this, and again, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I may send it out to some people that didn't get to come here today that would have liked to, and I hope that's okay with you. But maybe
Absolutely.
thank you. Maybe just put in a little plug where you're located and what you do and who you like to work with in case somebody knows somebody.
Well, Peter Borbas, Borbas Surveying and Mapping, and we like to mainly work around the New York metropolitan area in complicated projects, complex projects, things that other surveyors and mapping companies haven't done before, haven't been able to figure out, new things, finding solutions, particularly in environmental end of things, investigation, compliance, remediation, and significant transportation and industrial infrastructure improvement projects.
And knowing a thing or two about you, I also know that's on multi-levels. It could be underwater, it could be from above with drones. You cover the gamut.
Underwater, going up the sides of the bank, terrestrial, and from the air. We'll map it.
And
We'll
not
map it.
residential, correct?
Only if you've got a very significant lawsuit that's going to allow me to make a ton of money on that.
Very good. Pete, I can't thank you enough for doing this, and I'll let you know the next time you come around in the rotation, and hopefully you can join us again.
It would be wonderful, Chris. Thanks for having me come today.
So good staying in touch.
David, it was great to see you.
Yeah, same here, Pete. I enjoyed the presentation.
All right. And
All
we
right.
will, we won't be strangers, David.
Yeah, let's
Be
keep that
seeing you.
communication going.
Yeah,
Okay.
David, why don't you send Pete an email just so he has you in file in case he ever needs you?
Yeah, I think
Or I'll introduce you to or something like that. We'll figure-
Excellent. And I'll get my contact information over to you, David.
All right.
terrific.
Very good, guys. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks.
All right.
Great to see you.
Yeah, take
Bye-bye.
care.